Hey folks, welcome to part 4 of manual testing series. So in this video we will talk about verification and validation and what are the difference between verification and validation. On day-to-day basis we will be using these terms. So understanding verification and validation is important. So let's get started. First let's understand what is verification. Verification is the process of checking that the software achieves its goals without any bugs. For example, you have to verify something, okay? At that time, in this process, what we will do actually is we will check if we can find any errors or bugs early itself. Okay, it is the process to ensure whether the product that is developed is right or not. So in the whole journey of uh, developing a product, verification plays an important role. We have to verify each of the things. Okay, whatever we are doing, we have to get it verified from either from your peer or anyone or from your stakeholder. So get it reviewed. It verifies whether the developed product fulfills the requirement that we have. The major intention of verification is to achieve the goal itself. But that process, we will have to make sure that whatever we are developing is right. Okay, and it is a static testing. I'll explain what is testing. Verification means, are we building the product right? In the whole process, we will also have to make sure that whatever product we are building is correct or not. We are following the correct process or not. We are in the same page. All the team members who are developing or who are testing, all are in the same page or not. Means it means that we all have to be in the same understanding. Correct? For example, developer has written a piece of code, so he has to get it reviewed. So once it is reviewed, so that is kind of a peer review, or also you can have a walkthrough. Okay, you can have a walkthrough or a review or a peer review kind of review to meet this verification. So verification is not only about that. Even from the requirement refining, we can have the verification done so that as early as possible we can avoid the issues or the errors. So hope you got what is verification. So it is a static testing, and we will make sure that are we building the product right or not. Let's move on to validation. Validation is the process of checking whether the software product is the mark, or in the other words, product has high level requirements. So for example, so you have the requirement now. So now it's the QA's turn to validate the application. Whatever the expectation, are we meeting that expectation? So that is what we will check in the validation. It is the process of checking the validation of the product. That is, it checks what we are developing is the right product. Okay, whatever we are developing is correct or not, it is right or not. So there is a quite difference. Okay, it is validation of actual and expected product. Okay, so whatever actual product, the application that we will have, right, once the developer has developed it, so that's where we will have this actual and expected validation we will perform. Validation is dynamic testing. So in this process, it is a dynamic. We will enter the values and we will check whether if I perform this action, whatever I'm getting, the result is proper or not. So it is a dynamic testing. Validation means, are we building the right product? So you can notice there is a slight difference. Are we building the product right? Are we building the right product? So in verification and validation, there is a quite difference. So that means that the process, whatever we are going through, will The end goal is same. Okay. So, but what we are making sure is different. We are making sure that are we building the right product? Whatever we are building is right or not. Okay. That we will make sure in the validation. So, just to give you an example, what we will do is the requirement is a documentation. Consider it as a documentation. So, what we will do is we will review it. Okay, we can review that documentation. For example, in QA case, we can have test case documentation or test plan documentation. So all those are the documents. Okay, so we can get it reviewed from either our leads or somebody senior kind of people. We can get it reviewed. So that is what is verification. But when it comes to validation, it is you who perform the validation on the application. So now you have got the application. Okay. So you have product or the application in your hand. Now you have to perform the actions according to the requirement and check whether you have met that requirement or not. So it is just a static testing. So you can just go through line by line in verification. But in validation, you have to put values and cross verify whether the product is working fine or not. So that is the major difference. Okay. So let's understand few of the difference between the verification and validation. Verification, it includes checking documents, design, codes, programs. Okay, as we discussed, it just includes static verification, which is nothing but document verification or the design. Say if there is a design, you can verify it, or the code or the programs. Whereas the validation, it includes testing and validating the actual product. So, how you will validate the actual product? You will compare the actual versus expected and verify whatever outcome we are expecting is proper or not. So that is what we will validate. And we know that verification is the static testing, whereas validation is the dynamic testing. Does not include the execution of the code. You don't have to execute program. Okay. But in case of validation, it includes the execution of the program. Okay, so now you have a software product, so you have to validate. So that means that behind the scene there will be piece of code which runs. But in case of verification, you can just show or review it through the developers. Okay, suppose say there is a piece of code, so get it reviewed from the lead or any of your seniors so that you have the verification done. Methods used in verification are reviews, walkthroughs, inspection, and desk checking. So these are the words actually we use. Walkthrough is nothing but you can give a walkthrough of your code or walkthrough of your test case. Basically, a document verification. Document you can walk through line by line. Okay. So these are the reviews or walkthroughs, inspection, desk checking. So these are the different types of methods that we can use. When it comes to validation, methods used in validation are black box testing, white box testing, and functional testing. So you will put all the testing types like either black box testing, where uh, testers will use this black box testing technique, whereas white box testing technique developers will use, right? And the non-functional testing. So these are the different types of testing that will be performed on the application to validate that application. Okay, checks whether the software conforms to the specification or not. Once we go through that, you can verify whether we are on to the specification properly or not. It checks whether the software meets requirements and expectations of the customer or not. So once you test the application, so you will get to know whether we are meeting the customer's expectation or not. can find bugs in the early stage of the development. Okay, in the early stage. So verification is required on most of the times. Why, I'll tell you. So if you have a requirement now, get it reviewed from your stakeholders or the business owners, okay, so that you will get the clarity. So that is also a kind of verification. So after that, once the design is done, then also we will have to get it reviewed, or get to needs to be verified and approved by them. Okay, once it is approved, next you can go for the development, where the developers will develop a product. So once the product is developed, that's where we testers or the validation comes into picture. So here in this also, as a testers, we also will get reviewed with our test plans. We can get it reviewed actually, or even the test cases. And after the final product also, you can uh, show the results. So that is also kind of verification, whether all the tests are passing or not. Okay, and this helps in verification, helps in finding the bugs in the early stage, because it starts from the early stage. So from the very beginning phase we will start verifying it. So that's where we are, the tendency towards finding the defects in the early stage of development is more. Can only find bugs that could not be found by the verification process. So, whenever you validate, that's when you will get to know what types of errors are, what types of bugs are present in the system. So, that's why after you test it, then only you will be able to find the bugs. So, that's where the both of the process differs. The goal of verification is application and software architecture and specification. The goal of validation is an actual product. So here the concentration are two different things. Here it is the software verification of the application like a code. Okay, and then the architecture, that is the design, and the specification is the requirement. But the major goal of the validation is the actual product, whatever we are building, mainly the application, I could say. It comes before validation. Okay, first the verification will happen, then only the validation comes into picture. So it comes before validation, it comes after verification. Okay, it consists of checking of documents or files, whereas it consists of the execution of the program. Execution doesn't mean that you will execute code, you will execute the test cases, where in written you are executing the code itself. Behind, code will be running. Verification is for prevention of errors, whereas validation is detection of errors. So we can prevent as early as possible. For that reason, verification is required. If there is any errors or any bugs that are present in the system, then only validation can find it out. Verification is about process, standard, and guideline, whereas the validation is about the product. So it is major concentration is on the product. Okay. So these are the major difference between verification and validation. So both of terms will be used quite commonly, okay, during the development or the testing phase. Okay. So hopefully you got an understanding of what is verification and validation. Let's meet in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.